Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review of the GreenLee 660 Quick Change Carbide hole saw set. This is for sheet metal up to 3/16 or just under 5 millimeter. You can actually drill up to 5/16, but you have to be real careful because these cutters don't have a lot of depth. All the metal shavings end up in these pockets here, and this is a good opportunity to close look. They're all laser etched. It's a 5-piece set, giving you a 7/8, a 1 1/8, 1 3/8, 1 3/4, and 2 inches. They have these shelves both on the outside, so when you punch through the hole, it doesn't go all the way through, but it's a stop, which is a nice feature. These are not considered heavy-duty hole saws for drilling through thick steel. They use a 3 Denton or a 3-ball mount, which is a nice mounting system, but under severe conditions, it will twist or jam up. Especially in deeper cuts where the hole saw can get jammed. But if you're real careful and you peck lightly, you could drill 1/4-inch steel with this, but you just need to go several passes each time. So make sure to clear out the chips and it doesn't want to bind up. One thing I was going to mention is these are really well made because the carbide, it's brazed carbide, but rather than just having the piece of carbide stuck on the face of the metal, you can see that they machine out a groove and the bottom of the piece of carbide is actually locked in to that little setting. And that's one aspect that actually makes these quite a bit nicer than a lot of carbide hole saws, is because the teeth are much more rigid and much more securely held. If you take another close look, I like the shelf because that helps limit the depth of cut, so this doesn't want to bite in and take a deep cut. Especially if you're drilling other softer materials like plastics or even thin wood, that would be just fine for these. How it works is you have this nice little holder, and it's really well machined. It's beautiful. It has a nice ball dentant, replaceable standard 1/4-inch hole saw center drill, but it has a nice spring on it. So these just slip on there and just lock into place nicely with that ball detent, excuse me. And then when you drill the hole, you get a lot of pressure from the spring, and then as soon as it gets thin enough, the spring will pop out the metal bit. The one issue I have with this is that the spring is actually it's really strong. It will pop out the centerpiece, but once you drill the pilot hole, you have to press really hard, and it wobbles around a bit when you're using the spring, so half the time I actually take the spring off. And the spring's pretty easy to take off. You just have to twist it and it just comes right off that little mount. The case did come for a space for a spare center drill bit, but they didn't include a provision in the top of the lid. So if you put a bit in there, it just ends up falling around and dinging up the hole saws. So I thought that was a little bit weird. They should have made a little better area or had this actually snap the bit in. Let's see if we can't demonstrate this without hurting myself. I'll use the small hole saw here. Just a second. Here we are. We're going to try to use one on a tin can here. It's actually a steel can. One other thing I'll mention, because it's a quick change system, you get a little bit of wobble. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's why, these aren't meant for for thick metal drilling. They're made for quickly popping holes for conduit, sheet metal for cars, and those types of applications. Now let's see if I can't hurt myself. Wow, it wasn't really, a carbide hole saw is not going to have a lot of issue. And if we pop that out, here we are. It actually went through it almost come on, camera. Almost instantaneously. That was kind of interesting. I'm going to get set up and do one more little demonstration. A real nice thing about carbide hole saws is if you're ever drilling plastics, if you run them at very high speeds, they can give you finishes that are pretty amazing. And I'm going to see if I can't get that to work out for us here. Alright, here we are. We're going to try these in a piece of acrylic. Hopefully this isn't a disaster on video. And we're going to actually run it with a 1/4 drill this time because the cordless only goes to 2,000 RPM. This is 2,500 RPM. This will be way too fast. You might get away with this speed in aluminum, but the problem with super high speeds is, of course, you'll end up overheating the bits. So if you're drilling sheet metal, I wouldn't advise running it anywhere near that speed, and it does have recommended speeds. These are carbide, so they are rated for stainless steel, which is nice. So let's see how this works out. That didn't work out at all. As soon as it came through, it's kind of hard to control, so it would be much easier in a drill press than it would. That was wild. Yeah, as soon as it hit, all the teeth bounced off easily. Just way too much speed. But in the case that you have a drill press and you can run these at very high speed, be able to get a lot more control, and it can make very, very smooth finishes. You can drill through acrylic with carbide and end up making it totally clear. It just needs to get really high speed so it kind of melts the plastic just on the fine edge as it's going through. Excuse me. Anyway, that was just a quick review and minor demonstration of the GreenLee carbide tipped hole saw set, even with my little error there. And they're generally recommended, although I will say that these are pretty expensive. I ended up purchasing these off of eBay because the retail price on these is pretty pricey. I'll have to say that. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. Catus Maximus out.